Hey guys, it's Stina from Goddess Guitars, and I'm back with the next installment of the ES Chinese kit that I got in the mail. So, sanding and prep work for the finish on the body, and then we'll also be working on the actual finish of the body. I don't know if it'll be completed today, but it'll definitely at least be the first step in getting this guitar.
Okay, so I'm going to be starting with a 180 grit sanding block just to tap down the little fibers and raised grain that has happened, as well as to hopefully knock down any of that glue that is seeped out in the binding, as well as any gluey fingerprints left by the people at the factory. So I'm just being very thorough on the face as well as around the binding, wherever I saw what I would think would be glue. And definitely concentrating on the sides and those edges where that end grain is definitely a little bit rougher. One thing that I always emphasize is you cannot sand enough, especially with these kits, because even when you are super thorough about the sanding, you will find that you do have some missed spots, and you'll have to go back in and sand again once you've laid in your first layer of color. It's just, they're notorious for this. So take your time when sanding these, and a little bit extra elbow grease in the beginning saves you a lot of heartache at the end. So after I've finished sanding with the 180 sanding block, I do the same thing with 320 grit sanding block, just to get it smoother. You don't want to go too high before you do your finish work, because you want to keep the wood grain open, and if you go any higher than about 380 or 400, you are going to start closing out that grain, and it's going to be harder for the dyes or the paints to penetrate. So definitely knock off the grain that's standing up and make it nice and smooth. Get all of the blueprints and marks off, but don't go higher than 400 at this point. So after I sanded and got everything smooth, I started opening the pomegranate, and you can see me opening it now. Pomegranates are a very strange fruit. If you can see, all of those little seeds are actually encapsulated in a little pocket of juice. So what I'm doing is using a spoon, and I'm just scraping out as many of those little seed pockets, little juice pockets as possible. And they're kind of getting everywhere. But yeah, so I'm just emptying those out because I want to get as much of that juice and as much as those little seeds as possible. So I finished the first half and I'm going on to the second half. If you've ever opened up a pomegranate before, you know that everything is really, really highly pigmented for the juice. So now I'm just using the spoon and kind of crushing those seeds and those juice pockets to kind of get a little bit of juice there. Okay. Now comes the next fun part. Okay, so we're going to start spreading that juice onto the guitar body. And this is a bit messy and a bit sticky, but I'm really loving the color that it initially started out with, and just trying to smooth that around as much as possible, so that way I had a pretty uniform coverage on the juice. So I'm just kind of making sure that it's really being rubbed into the grain, as well as just making sure that any drips on the side are going to actually be rubbed in as well. And then I'm just taking the remnants of the flesh and wiping it off. Okay, so we're going to be doing the same thing on the front. This is a little bit more difficult because we do have the open holes, as well as the holes for the electronics, and it is a semi-hollow, so I try my best to not have any of those seeds fall into the holes. So I was kind of at that point just kind of scooping the juice itself onto the wood. And it's really soaking it up, which is a good thing. I was really happy about that initial first color. And then, of course, last but not least, we're going to be doing the sides. Of taking any drips that may have happened and getting them so that way they're blended in. So, according to mythology, Persephone was the daughter of Demeter and Zeus. Zeus is the head honcho, the god of gods. He was the guy who pretty much gave yay or nay on everything. And Demeter is also known as Mother Nature. She is the goddess of all living things. And so their daughter Persephone caught the eye of Hades, who is the god of the underworld. And Hades fell madly in love with Persephone, with her beauty, and he had seen her picking flowers one day in the meadow. There is a belief that in some accounts Zeus had given his consent and knew about what Hades was going to do, but Hades abducted Persephone to live with him in the underworld. Meanwhile, Demeter searched the earth for her lost daughter, and Helios, or Hermes, also known as Mercury, told her of her daughter's fate. Nevertheless, she continued her wanderings until finally she just lost faith, and she mourned and mourned and mourned Persephone and stopped caring for all the living things, and everything started dying. Everything started to die. Plant life did. There was famines, and she withdrew from the world. She created massive droughts, and finally, Zeus sent Mercury, or Hermes, to persuade Hades to release his bride, Persephone. And before giving her up, though, Hades knew that he didn't want to leave her completely. He didn't want to give her up completely. And, you know, with all of these mythological gods and goddesses, they're a little bit tricky. So Hades is no different. And so before he releases her back to Demeter, he offers her a pomegranate. And Persephone eats 6 pomegranate seeds, knowing that the divine taste would compel her to return to him. In some versions of the myth, Persephone could have only been released if she had not eaten anything in the underworld during her captivity. But there was a compromise, and seeing that she ate 6 seeds, Persephone was to be released for 6 months out of the year, and then in the next 6 months she would return to Hades and live in the underworld and be the queen of the underworld. So that is how the seasons actually started, because when Persephone returned to Demeter, she no longer mourned Persephone, and so therefore things started to come back to life again, and started to grow and proliferate, and everything started to reproduce, and you had flowers, and you had living things having babies, and just wonderful. Think about spring and summer and what a fruitful time it is. But then come autumn, that's when Persephone goes back to Hades, and that's when Demeter starts mourning the loss of her daughter once again, and things start to die, and things start to go dormant, and that is how the old civilizations actually gave the reasoning for the seasons.
What a mess I made. Good thing I put a towel down. I'm sure that the birds will like the leftover seeds, so I'll put them in the backyard. And I think I'll keep this amount to the headstock and the neck, which will be on another video. So this is the color as it's drying. This is just the pomegranate juice. You can see some of the flaming coming out. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to click like and subscribe and hit the little notification, guys. We'll see you next time.